Welcome to Both Sides of the Slash, a roundtable podcast that discusses provocative questions at the intersection of sex, power, love, taboo, and our deepest, darkest, most delightful desires. I'm Nicolle Hodges, journalist, BDSM educator, and your guide through each episode. Our guest today, Andrea Gutierrez. There we go. Therapist and trauma specialist, Brittany Davey, embodiment guide and pleasure witch, and Dr. Yolinda Renee, psychologist and creator of Therapeutic BDSM, that even has the little trademark symbol beside it. Let's go in, everyone. First and foremost, we're going to cover a current event. So you'll be able to find the link in the show notes to this article. To summarize it for any of our listeners and or viewers, hi. A recent class action lawsuit alleges that OnlyFans subscribers were misled into believing they were interacting with human performers, when in fact, they were interacting with AI-driven bots. The evolving role of artificial intelligence in adult entertainment, I think, is going to be a super hot topic over the next few years, especially looking at OnlyFans' influence. In 2024, F generated $6.3 billion in gross revenue, and that was up from $300 million 5 years earlier. Obviously, things really peaked during the pandemic. You know, as AI becomes part of adult entertainment, how can we actually make sure that people know what's real? And does it matter?
That's such a good question.
Doesn't matter,
Go ahead.
right? You know, so that's the thing. Does it
Doesn't
matter?
matter.
Yeah. There's a whole lot of conversation about like AI is like intimacy, like companions or whatever, like in the clinical and therapeutic space. And I actually have a student who was doing research on it. And the issue is like ethically, like who's programming these things? Like that was kind of the question I was having her dig deeper into. It's like a double-edged sword. I feel like it can be very helpful and impactful and fill a lot of gaps for people. And also, I think it could also create more like isolation, you know, for folks, right? So, and they will begin to focus more on these AI versus the sometimes uncomfortable situation that we have when we're dealing with another human, right? It can get a little messy, have a little bumps along the road, but your question about does it matter, like that gets the mind going. What do y'all think, ladies?
Yeah, I feel like the questions that I'm more interested in are like who's getting paid. So
Right.
like who's running the bots? Is it like cam babes getting their coin, or is it like someone else? And do they need it? And then what does that mean? And I feel like what I also feel more curious about is obviously this greater impact of AI on our environment and on surveillance. So for me, I see articles like this and I'm like, yeah, what's the deeper stuff? Like this is an interesting way that it's being used, but it's like 0.0001% being used this way. And mostly it's being used to track people, like the four of us who are probably on the list for having this conversation and doing the work that we do, tracking trans folks and immigrants and people who have been involved in organizing around Palestinian liberation.
The need for radical transparency, I think, is foundational. And there needs to be accountability. Like they're a leader in this platform. So yeah, users knowing who they're interacting with and performers also if they're having their data used to train the AIs so that that's also being compensated fairly.
I think the use of the word transparency is really key here. And it sounds like from this lawsuit, the people who are suing OnlyFans are doing so because they feel misled. They weren't aware that they were talking to a bot. And I can imagine that in many ways, you think you're talking to a person, you think you're getting this attention and you're actually paying for this attention, and you haven't developed intimacy with this bot. You've developed a certain attachment to the person. OnlyFans have a clause, and they say that their content creators are allowed to work with third parties, but they list off things like photographers, videographers. What I think is going to end up happening is AI is going to now be listed as a third party operator, like we might hire somebody to run our social media. And you're not always talking to the direct person. You might be talking to their social media manager. So let's say that this content creator, we'll call her Chloe. Chloe, the content creator on OnlyFans, has opted into creating an AI clone of herself in order to talk to more people at once and gain more revenue by being able to have more conversations with more people. One, do you think that that might be a direction that you would agree with? And two, how do you actually see those types of interactions changing our understanding of intimacy?
I'm wondering if it'll get to the point where AI will become so prolific that one-on-one or human connection would become like the golden, like what you're going to pay a premium for, right? You know what I mean? Like that will become something that you're like, oh, I want a real person, so I'm willing to pay extra dollars for that, right? And I wonder if it'll be like a tiered system where, okay, if you want that me, you're gonna pay $10.99, but if you want the real me, you're gonna pay $190. You know what I mean? I'm curious as to how this is gonna add layers as to the content access, and I'm wondering if it'll shift to the point where, yeah, like human interaction would become a premium for those who can afford it, which would become odd because now human interaction is going to be for those who have the money. That, then it gets a little weird.
I
Like,
think when it comes to intimacy, it's super interesting because with the AIs, it removes the element of authenticity, and AI like stimulates a response. It doesn't feel them or possess the embodied wisdom. So we're not really building a relationship of trust. And then like what's being lost as a result of it? Like, are we already kind of like increasing isolationist trends by deciding not to learn some of these skills of relational attachment and how to navigate conflict if there's a more accessible tool for artificial intimacy? And what type of need does that actually fill?
Yeah, I think this is a newer issue that I've been slowly learning about because people are using ChatGPT as their therapist. And I always would joke as a therapist, like, oh, yeah, like AI is never going to come for my job because I'm a therapist. And then I've actually overheard people or seen people talking online about, yeah, my therapist wasn't really cutting it. It was really expensive. So I've been using chat and it's been like so helpful for me. And so I think that there's definitely a money component. And then I think if people are disappointed by the services they're getting, whether it's from their Camgirl of choice or their therapist, there's an easy way to turn to something that will be like perfect maybe for that person or maybe perfect for certain things. But I really like what you said, Brittany, about embodied wisdom and how that gets lost. And I think that there is ultimately nothing that can replace human interaction. I know from my clients, and I think also a lot of people who do seek out cam girls or other sex workers know that too. And that's why they don't just watch porn, for example. It's like they want a human interaction. Maybe, it will be like a higher price, or maybe it will be on the outskirts of society. Like you have to go out into the streets to find someone again.
You bring up a really good point on perfection. If our expectation is perfection, like how does that impact us and how does it put demands on new relationships?
Andrea and Yolinda, as therapists and psychologists, are you worried about your jobs?
I feel like there are parts of me that are, because I personally do very specific modalities that sometimes I even joke like, oh, haha, like today I was a little bit of like an EMDR robot or an ICBT robot. But at the end of the day, the nuance in the work, first off, so this is more of like from a thinking about this more logically or more like academically, like the nuance of concepts is lost in translation so far. Maybe that will change. And then the other part of it is the healing relationship itself. And so even though I use really specific modalities and sometimes it can feel robotic in some ways, ultimately the river at the bottom of the ocean of the work is always our relationship. And me being a stand-in mother figure or parent figure, lover figure, whatever that is for that person. And I think that there's a way that AI could replicate that if you put enough on project. There's enough transference, as we say, as therapists. But at the end of the day, going back to attachment theory, if you look at studies, like there was a study that was done by Harlow, who is an attachment psychologist, and he had the wire mother and the cloth mother with these baby Reese monkeys. And the monkeys were babies. They were taken away from their mothers, which was horrible and absolutely animal cruelty. This was the 70s. And so the laws and the rules were slightly different. So the babies would go to the wire mother, and that is where the food was. So Harlow would only have the wire mother distribute food. And the babies would go to the cloth mother, for everything else. So she did not provide food, but she just provided comfort and care. And so I think we are those monkeys. And I don't think that I think AI is the wire mom and that we are the cloth mom, us humans, and that could change. But I think for most people, we're going to default to the cloth mother.
I saw I think it was on a thread, and it said, so I asked these three different entities for some advice. I asked my friend, I asked my therapist, and I asked ChatGPT, which one do you think gave me the best advice? Right? Like that was the question. And, they chose the chat. Now, I have an interesting perspective because I use ChatGPT and I call it like my diary that can talk back, right? I use it for that. So I can see how it can be beneficial for people who can use it with a level of consciousness, right? I don't think it replaces a therapist for me who have been doing the shadow work and all this shit for like 5, 6 years. For me, it's a reflection, right? So it's like, okay, this is giving me confirmation, this is giving me affirmation. But for someone who doesn't have that capacity, I think it could be a really slippery slope because then they're looking for validation. They're looking for something outside of them to feel good or to feel better versus using it as a tool, right? It becomes something that they're trying to replace versus adding it on as an addition. I think that's kind of where they're screwing up, is that they're trying to replace therapists versus just using it as a tool that we can have our clients use like in a gap, right? Because unfortunately access is limited. And for people who saying I can't afford or I don't have insurance, I understand why they might look towards this. So that's the system. You know what I mean? The system is jacked up and it creates a situation where people are then looking for Chat GPT. Is like a food desert. I'm eating Doritos every damn day because there's no fresh food in my neighborhood. I can't access a therapist, so I'm Chat GPTing it up every night because I don't have a choice. So there's so much to look at and to think about.
And then what's the fallout of that going to be, and how is that going to exacerbate other issues and areas and peripheral industries that we can't even see or think of yet, as some people get exclusive information from ChatGPT as it pertains to their own internal process, and then you have the group of people who have insurance or can afford what for many would be seen as a luxury to have access to a therapist.
Yeah.
Great points. Does anybody want to add anything else to the conversation of adult entertainment and AI? If we don't move on, I'm going to ask every single one of you if you could ever imagine yourself falling in love with a bot.
In love with a bot? Nah. But friendly? Sure. That's my bro. That's my homie.
I'm a big fan of Gemini, Google's AI tool, and like Yolanda said, I like using it as a tool similar to like divination tools. It's there to be used with discernment. But my partner always jokes. He's like, "You're replacing me. Like you're having conversations that are like really intimate." Like yeah, it's really interesting how it comes up because he jokes about it. But like, yeah, what actually is it replacing or adding? I also use it to add fun.
If your partner used ChatGPT, Brittany, to come up with a thorough plan for like a date night, would you find it as romantic that he hadn't come up with it himself?
I think knowing that like where intention lies can help a lot. Yeah, so maybe I could fall in love with a bot. I don't know. Learn something new every day.
The research is happening already. Like in Japan, it's a thing, right? They have intimacy bots. Like, it's a thing already.
We're going to see Brittany in 1 year. We'll have a Where Are They Now episode. We'll be in a polyamorous tripod with AI clothes.
With
Can't
Gemini.
wait. I can't wait.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on. So for any listeners, we divide this podcast up into different segments. First one, obviously pulling apart some recent news that intersects with the things that we love to talk about: sex taboo, desire, eros, intimacy. Then we move on to our second segment. One question will be asked to one person who has deep knowledge of that area, and then we'll all comment on it. So myself included, we can continue the conversation as a roundtable discussion, but just giving each person a moment to shine. Dr. Yolinda Renee, we're going to start with you. We mentioned that you have something trademarked, right? This therapeutic BDSM. It's incredible. Perhaps you can explain the difference between therapeutic interventions and therapy itself, and why this distinction is vital to ethical BDSM practices.
So for me, the distinction between therapy and therapeutic intervention is crucial, right? So especially in conversations around BDSM. So therapy in a clinical sense refers to a licensed, regulated practice facilitated by trained mental health professionals. Now it involves diagnosing, treating, and supporting clients within a defined scope of practice and legal accountability. But the word therapy doesn't just belong to the mental health world, right? You see it used across professions like massage therapy, art therapy, physical therapy, even music therapy.
If
Now,
I could
some of
just jump in 1 second, I've been
yeah,
keeping track of where I've seen the word therapy, and I was in a mall food court, and I saw the word shake therapy, as in they were serving shakes and calling it therapy, and I was like, I'm tired of this shit. BDSM is therapy. I've had enough.
so watered down that it's like, what does it even mean for real at this point, right? And the thing is, some of these things are regulated, others aren't. Depending on what country you're in, there's different regulations. So therapists in like the US have different standards than therapists might have, like, say, in the UK. So while the term therapy is widely used, not every form of therapy is clinical or held to the same standard. And that creates confusion, right? And sometimes harm if we don't clarify what are we talking about. So that's why I create a distinction between therapeutic BDSM as a healing intervention, but it's not therapy, right? It's an intentional process that brings together a kink-informed clinician, a trained embedded BDSM practitioner, and the client, right? So the practitioner and the clinician come together for the benefit of a client, almost like a treatment team, right? Each person has a clearly defined role, and the goal is isn't to replicate therapy, it's to support healing through embodied somatic power dynamics based experiences that are held in safety, consent, and collaboration. Right. So we also build in preparation and integration. This is not just a scene by itself, it's also part of a broader healing journey. So the ethics matter deeply, because without clarity around the roles, the scope, and consent, we could risk re-traumatization, right? But with the right container, it can be transformative space where people reconnect with power, agency, and with self. So it's a whole thing.
I got to
Yeah.
do this. I'm going for a walk.
Yes. Where you walking to? Where you going?
There it is. I'm coming back. I'm back. I can't leave you guys for too long. This is too good. That is so important, because you wrote a book on this as well.
Mhm.
Which I'll link to. And I'm exploring the same thing in my book, asking all of these experts, could BDSM ever be considered a form of therapy? And ultimately, they're like, it's therapeutic already. Like, we don't need permission. But if it's going to actually be considered therapy, this therapeutic alliance, which is essentially what you're saying, between practitioners who maybe specialize in different areas, for the benefit of the client, might be a step towards that.
Yeah, because at first we thought about, or I was thinking about, like, okay, can the therapist hold this role themselves? And then dual role and all of the ethics and all of the rules that we have as therapists. It's like, well, why do we need to kind of Columbus somebody else's lane? We have pros already doing the work. They're already creating therapeutic space. Why don't we work together versus trying to usurp someone else's positioning? They don't have to try to be the therapist. They can be therapeutic, right? Because it's already happening. We don't have to try and be the pro in the space. We can work together. And I just graduated the first cohort of the Therapeutic BDSM Collaborative Network. I trained 5 clinicians, I trained 3 pros. We have the first cohort that's been graduated, and there's a lot of buzz around it. Like, people are really interested in this being a legitimate form of an intervention, right? Because therapeutic BDSM isn't by itself, it is a part of self reconciliation therapy, which is the modality that therapeutic BDSM is a part of, right? So I could go on about that all day long, so I'll stop here. But yeah, it's a thing. Seeing head nods. What's the head? Like, I'm seeing the head nods.
I'm so excited about this because I have so many clients who are both women and trans folks who've been doing this for years. And we've been doing integration sessions in my practice where they will see their pro and then we'll talk about it. We'll do Some will literally use those memories as a grounding or regulation tool in BDSM and EMDR. Another four letter, just kind of been like going for it. But I love that there are more clinicians who are literally getting trained in how to do this, and then also getting the pros on board to collaborate and making this official. Not that we need things to be official, but this deserves to be. And I'm so glad that you're the person who's doing it.
These things obviously take time, but you've obviously you've pushed something past the post now, right? You just said you graduated your first cohort. So what was the barrier to that happening sooner?
So, a couple of different things. So, I really feel like I'm a channel, right? Like if you would have told me like 5 years ago this would be what the hell I'd be doing, I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? So I've been channeling this. So right, I feel like I'm the steward. So one of the things I noticed when I was doing my research is that the pros, when I first started talking about it, what I realized is that they thought I was saying like kink therapy, like I was going to train them to be a kink therapist. And I'm thinking, I can't do that. I can't make you a therapist because regulations, things and that, me thinking about it. So what that let me know was that there was a group of pros who was looking for a form of legitimacy, right? Because one of the barriers was pros don't have any type of paperwork or receipts like a therapist. We have certificates and licenses and all of this. The pros, it's like, well, who did you go to? Who was your mentor? Who did you train under? And they don't really have anything tangible to show. And so I recognize this gap. There are people who want receipts. There are people who want a level of professionalism in the space, but then you also have pros who just want to do them. So I found that a lot of the pros were kind of moving away from the accountability, but there was a small group of people who really saw this as sacred work. And those are the people who found themselves as a part of what I'm doing. Like this was a mission for them. It wasn't just about, I want to give sensation, I want to have fun. It's that plus this is sacred, right? And so it was interesting kind of seeing where people fell when I was having conversations with people about this work. And eventually I just jumped. It was theory for 6, 7, 8, 9 years. And I finally just said, fuck it, let's just try and make it happen. So that's what happened.
Think of all the modalities that the therapeutic world would have if more people felt empowered to be like, this is healing and this deserves to be an approach.
That required several years of shadow work to get to this point to feel like I could do it, right? So I always feel when I talk to my clients, I say, I speak to you as I speak to myself. I'm not asking you to do anything I haven't gone through. I've been dragged by my eyebrows just like you. So let's to relate. But yes, it took a lot. I'm getting feedback from people. People are noticing, but I'm not yet being invited, which is interesting. So I'm just kind of watching and that's all.
When you say not being invited, is there something specific that you have in mind with that? Is this make your own seat at the table, or what are we talking about here?
Kind of, sort of. So I've talked to several different people who said that my name has come up in different circles. Like, well, this person who's high up is talking about like the APA, right? They have a task force, and he was like, oh, your name came up several times in this task force. It'd be really cool to have this really big conglomerate be behind you. I'm like, if they do, cool. If not, whatever. I'm not going to depend on the American Psychological Association to back me up. I do that, but it'd be nice. I wouldn't say no to it. Give me some funds, please. Thank you. But that's what I'm noticing is people are saying my name is coming up, but no one has reached out to me, these big wigs, to have the conversation yet. I feel like they're just watching to see what I do, which is why I got all my shit trademarked. What you're not about to do is steal my stuff. Okay, that's what we're not going to do, because I knew that would be possible. That if I didn't, I wouldn't be protected, because as a Black woman, I would be really easy to kind of step on or step over, and I refuse.
Hell yeah.
Yes.
Andrea, you had said something. I feel like this is a pretty decent segue. You've stepped away from polyvagal theory. Can
Yeah,
you
totally.
on why, and then your current approach to kink and trauma?
So we're talking about modality and approaches, and I'm not a big person in like, this needs to be approved, for example, like you, Linda, said, by the APA for this to be legit. The polyvagal theory is a theory, and that's fine. There are lots of theories about lots of things that haven't been proven. there's a lot of aspects of the science that just aren't science. And I do like to keep things pretty scientific if I can. So I was using this theory at a time before I had refined my own understanding of the nervous system and the ways that I wanted neuroscience light to be a part of my practice. And the other aspect too, well, there's two other things I want to say about it. The first thing is that a lot of different ways of describing the brain or the nervous system will talk about the reptilian response, the reptilian brain, the mammalian brain, or the mammalian response, which puts these species as lower than humans. And this is a very colonial way of speaking because, reptiles, if you cut off their tail, it's going to grow back. I can't grow my arm back. So why are we being speciesist? And what does that allow us to do? What kind of destruction is allowed for the planet if we posit human as above all else? So with the polyvagal theory, there's a lot of like, yes, so this part of your nervous system, this was the first part of the nervous system that formed. It's the reptilian. So it's this like base instinct, primitive, all of this very problematic and colonial language. So that's another reason why I've really stepped away from it. And then the third reason is I see this with the clients in my practice where they'll read something, and this can be with polyvagal theory, or this can frankly be with like basically anything about like soothe your nervous system, regulate your nervous system. So it'll be like a recording on Spotify. It's like, listen to this playlist and your nervous system will be balanced. And then it doesn't work because I work with highly traumatized individuals and then they feel like they're broken. And I do see a lot of stuff about the nervous system that's out there that's like, do this meditation, do this breathing exercise, listen to this tuning fork, and you're going to be regulated. And then when that doesn't work, which it usually doesn't. Yeah. So that's another thing. So instead, what I'm more interested in is the nervous system versus a theory about it. What we do know, what is scientifically proven. Not that science is above all types of knowledge, because it's super not. But if you look at most ancient wisdom practices or belief systems, there was already an understanding of the nervous system. The tree of life in Kabbalah, the chakra system, the different acupuncture and acupressure points reflect the nervous system. So this is not to say that like it has to be in a lab with a bunch of like white coats to be real, but more like, okay, what's been around a long time? And so the nervous system has been regulated, or people have been trying to care for their nervous system or have even a spiritual understanding of their nervous system for thousands of years. So I feel more interested in that and thinking about healing from trauma, or even just healing from the stress, the daily traumas of living. I like to call this trauma of modern living, or trauma of the modern world. And I always say this with modern in quotations because modernity is how we got here. It's why our planet is falling apart and why we're all so isolated. But that if you get to know your unique nervous system and you get to know what works for you to feel more calm and regulated, then you don't have to feel shitty when the like polyvagal yoga class nervous system tuning doesn't work for you, because that's fine. It's your nervous system and that wasn't your thing. And so you can just go and find what that is, whether it's engaging in kink with a partner or a pro, or whether it is just like laying outside in the grass, not doing anything, or watching videos of people thrifting on YouTube. Like whatever regulates your nervous system is great, babe. It doesn't have to be anything in particular. That's what I'm more interested in. And then also the way that our nervous system is adaptively designed to protect us. And so the issue with, again, trauma of the modern world is that we are getting signals constantly from the world around us that we're not safe and that something bad is happening, which for most people in the world is actually true. And so our nervous systems are stuck in overwhelm. They're stuck in fight or flight. And so I also see this thing with polyvagal where it's like, you should be regulated. You should be relaxed all the time. But like things are really, really bad. So like, please don't tell a bunch of people that like they should be regulated and make them feel A, bad about themselves, and then B, like, why? Like, what if we want to be regulated to feel more connected to ourselves and our lives versus be more productive in capitalism? A lot of companies will pay for meditation apps or breathing classes for their employees. It's not because they care about their employees' wellness, it's because they want them to perform better at work. So if we're a little bit more curious about our unique nervous systems, and we honor the way that they're trying to keep us safe in a very confusing, overstimulating, overwhelming world, then the approach just feels a lot more gentle and curious than what I was experiencing with polyvagal theory, plus the science piece just really wasn't sitting well with me when there's already so much good stuff out there, both ancient and scientific.
I so appreciated hearing that as someone who's like been on a nervous system regulation, specifically doing the safe and sound protocol, those playlists you mentioned for quite a while. And the biggest takeaway that I found is just learning forgiveness and accepting the nervous system, my nervous system, exactly as it is. Yeah, and then just slowly, slowly building that window of tolerance and the ways that feel safe for me. Thank you so much for that reframe. Whew, I pulled the death card in tarot
Hell yeah.
today, so needed some old dying beliefs to be shed.
Hell yeah.
It's one of my favorite. Yeah.
Scorpios rock. High five myself.
Scorpio, yeah. Scorpio moon right here, like it's showing a little bit.
I mean, the nervous system, you know what? It's like, I think you mentioned, Nicole, like the word therapy. Everybody is just using the words, right? You know, it's all over social media. Everybody's an expert. You know, like you said, here's this meme. And it's so infuriating because, like you said, it can cause a lot of confusion for people who've been through complex trauma. You tell me to, you know, listen to some sound bowls and spin around 3 times and clap my hands, and now I'm supposed to be healed. Like, what the fuck? Like, you know, not saying that that can be helpful, but I doubt it's going to heal 30 years of trauma. I'm just saying, you know, but I like singing bowls, so I'm a use them, but I don't expect them to heal me overnight, you know? So it's like, I hate that we kind of carrot stick people. And if we're looking like at the coaching or even the spiritual community, so much of it has become a money grab, and it's so frustrating because now we're taking advantage of people who are desperate for relief, and we're saying join my 10,000 course or program and you'll be healed at the end. But will I? Because I tried that
Exactly.
myself and it didn't work. That's
Yes,
a 15K lesson.
absolutely. Yeah, no, Yolanda, thank you for bringing that in because I literally have worked with clients who can't afford to go to an inpatient facility because they spent all their money on someone's course that promised to get them better. So this is hurting people. This isn't just like, this made me feel broken. It's like you're taking money away from people who are really either have extremely complex trauma, like you said, and or are extremely mentally ill and need a lot more care and need a treatment team.
So I'm glad you're like decolonizing it, right? Like that's kind of what it sounds like you are leaning into, is decolonizing like all of that stuff, right? And making it applicable to humans of all kinds.
I am trying to. Thank you. I'm trying to.
Hmm.
I just had dog training lessons yesterday, and that phrase, like, just the trauma of living in modernity. And I was faced with the thought of, like, how hard it is to be a dog living in a human world. And, like, just, yeah, like, this is where I really find my magic is, like, learning and tuning into remembering the wisdom of the earth. Like, this has always been here. It's not trying to reinvent things. Like the somatic
Exactly.
shake of a dog has been the most helpful nervous regulation tool I've gotten. It's like, shake it out.
Exactly. If someone's charging you $10,000 to shake like a dog, something's wrong because we can just go look outside, see what's the earth doing, what are animals doing, what are kids doing, and that's not enough for a lot of people. But it's definitely a lot more than I think what a lot of people are offering, unfortunately. Yeah.
There's a Dom, Kasia Urbaniak. I don't know if any of you have heard of her. She wrote a book called Unbound, A Woman's Guide to Power. And she really came to understand dominance through dog training.
Wow.
Because the dog, it senses your energy and it responds to your energy. So it was really interesting that she took those practices and applied it then to being a Dom.
Super interesting.
And Andrea, I wanted to mention it because it was actually your lecture that I had come across a few years ago on polyvagal theory and kink. While I was doing my own navigation around the power of this and Is it therapy? Is it not? This was, about 5 years ago, maybe 6 years ago at this point. It was that lecture of yours. And it's funny because I think I had originally reached out wanting to interview you for the book, which I still want to do to get your kind of new, updated, fresh perspective. So like, bless the gods that I haven't published it yet. Otherwise, I would have been publishing old work of yours too.
Totally. It's how things change, right? Over 5 years, something that was like, this is it, is like outdated. It's
Absolutely.
wild.
But your ideas were still powerful. What are you using, or what are your thoughts right now on how you can use kink to regulate? And you had said some really powerful things around the journey of engaging in BDSM, being kind of going outside of your zone of tolerance and then coming back into it and reestablishing safety within yourself. I would love your updated take on that, or any practices that you know of or that you're exploring.
Totally. And I haven't updated the workshop on my website really because the ideas are still the same, which is that our nervous systems, because they are in this stuck on mode, which is anxiety, irritability, overwhelm, overstimulated, or stuck on off, which is that dissociated, depressed, feeling lethargic, chronic pain, which can happen on either side, really. But when we get some of this energy, which isn't, you can interpret energy in so many ways, but if you want to think about it from a nervous system perspective, like it is literally just built up cortisol and adrenaline that is just kind of stuck in our body. All of these survival responses we haven't been able to enact because we are in a society that really suppresses our bodies, both like state suppression of our bodies, but also just like societal and cultural expectations of what a body should and shouldn't do. And so we have all this shit stuck inside of us, however you want to think about it. And with kink, it's a way to, in an embodied way, in a safe and consensual and attuned way, we can let stuff move through our bodies. And that's going to help our nervous systems get back into that window of tolerance and be less stuck on or stuck on off. It's going to bring us out of hypoarousal, or it's going to bring us back down from hyper arousal. And then there's healing, and then there's catharsis. And catharsis is really a big expression. It can be like, the example I always give is in the 80s, it was really popular to like take a baseball bat to a pillow, like pretend it's your dad and beat up the pillow. And that was really powerful for people. But then things didn't really change in the long term. So they had this big cathartic event, but nothing really lasted. And so in order for kink to not be a catharsis, there does need to be, exactly what you, Linda, is working on, where it is integrated into self, but also it is just enough at the top of the window of tolerance where the person is edging close to overwhelm, but is not overwhelmed. And so you're able to tolerate the window of tolerance getting a little bit bigger, being able to experience a little bit more feelings, more embodiment. And most of our window of tolerances are actually quite small. So I think that kink is a great way to stretch that window, to dispel some of that gunked up energy and stress hormone in our body. And I also think it's when we express ourselves in an authentic way. And I would have typically said, like, this is your ventral vagal state. So the state where you feel most connected to self. And again, refinement is the practice of constantly looking at how we're talking and thinking about things and just getting more clear and more connected to our own core around it. But what I would say about that now is, like, when we really express our authenticity, we are connected to our core self. And that's a very regulating experience. And it's a great experience of meaning making. We're really making meaning out of ourselves and our lives. And pleasure is incredibly healing too. Healing for the nervous system, healing for the sense of self, especially for women, especially for survivors, especially for queer and trans folks, anybody who lives in an oppressed body. Pleasure is a complete radical act in this world. And so kink, and I could really go on and on about all the ways that kink can offer these what are called corrective emotional experiences, essentially a mismatch. So I was oppressed, and in kink I feel liberated. I was shamed for my sexuality, and now I am celebrated. I had no power, and now I have power. I didn't get to choose it. Now I get to choose it. So anytime we have the opposite experience, our nervous system experiences healing, but so does our sense of self. So do our inner parts, more from like an IFS perspective or parts work frame. And so all of that is going to be incredibly transformative for people.
I love that. That's the stuff
Mic
I
drop.
teach with my
That's what's happening.
pros. Exactly. Like I teach them the neurobiology of kink, right? And I teach them about attachment
Oh,
styles and how all of that impacts how they can show up and create a scene, right? So all of those things you just mentioned is a part of the training for the applied therapeutic BDSM pros. Yeah, I love that you've been talking about it for a while now. Obviously, like this is so dope. Like that, it's already out there. You've already been having a conversation, and yeah, and that's exactly what
thank you.
I'm teaching folks to do. That's what's up.
And Brittany is nodding along, especially when you said the word pleasure, as our episode Pleasure Witch, which I would love for you to tell me what that means.
Yeah,
I don't
so
know. I think maybe I am one, but I don't know if I've ever
I
considered
suspect
myself
all
able
of
to
us
find.
here have some pleasure witch in us. So, like Andrea just said, Hadrian Murray Brown, Audre Lorde are some great places for me where pleasure is the most radical thing we can do, especially under conditions of oppression. And part of that is being able to feel good in the messy and the dirty stuff, enjoying and savoring that shadow work. So for me, kink provides this container to express desires that are taboo or just even desire to be good in a safe space. And so just ways to deconstruct narratives and rewire things that didn't fit before. So using ritual and different ways to build your own life that's very pleasure based because it should feel good what we're doing. Life should feel good in our aspects even when we're struggling to enjoy that. But really what I see is the body as this space, as an altar for sensations and communication with the divine, the self, and creating these safe spaces to build that connection with our inner selves. I think in kink and when we do something with intention, in witchcraft or in a ritualistic setting, we remove the shoulds. We're just kind of in that space of radical authenticity with ourselves where we get those clear messages and we get to tap into what is it we really desire? What is it we want to experience as pleasure? Being able to help other people tap into that and find what it is that makes them feel good is something that brings me pleasure.
And you had mentioned the word divination.
Yes.
Can you expand on that? And then with human design in particular, how that might actually help people understand their kinks or their.
Yes. So things like tarot, I think are great archetypes. Something I've been working on is finding ways to queer the tarot and find ways to pervert it. Like what are these messages telling us? Using things like astrology, so looking to your Mars and your Venus and your Pluto, seeing what houses they're in to understand and to learn more about yourself. So things like human design, if you're familiar with it, it's kind of this blueprint and this guide of your own, the way your energy works within your body. So learning about ways that you're not in your energy. How does that come up? So it can be things like frustration or bitterness and learning to spot those emotions as not necessarily following your authority. So there's different ways that we have authority in our bodies. So sometimes it'll be in a sacral center. And there'll be different ways that it'll show up. So some people might need to wait for an invitation to explicitly be able to participate in the scene, or maybe someone like a manifester wants to be that initiator. So knowing how it is you receive invitations can really help to just lead to the best success and to be in alignment with your energy.
Does this resonate with either of you in the work that you do as well, especially when it comes to things like scene building, which I know can be quite ritualistic in many ways? I know you might be coming at it from a more academic standpoint, and of course, this is why I love that we're all in this room together because we get to hear other perspectives, but the core of it might be similar.
Actually, I used to do something called astrology, where I used to use astrology, tarot, and psychology to kind of read people's chart and to provide a a platform. He's called it a blueprint. I had something called Heal on Purpose, and I created blueprints for all of them based on their astrology and then tarot card pulling and then psychology. And a lot of this stuff I did it because I wanted to figure out myself, right? I'm like, I did the gene keys, I did the human design astrology because I'm like, who the hell am I? And I wasn't getting answers from just therapy. I wanted other modalities other than what was available. So yeah, all of that was very much a part of my work. And speaking about like different parts of your chart that could look at whether or not you might be more D or S leaning, you know what I mean? Whether or not it could be beneficial to help you with, because I did a lot of work around sexual trauma. That was what I was doing before I switched to this. And looking at that, looking at your fifth house, looking at your eighth house, so yeah, I love all the things woo. I have like 150 tarot cards over there in my office. Like I'm all about it. So it's so cool that we all have these things kind of in alignment. So Nicolle, you picked a hell of a group. So kudos to you for bringing us all together because look at the alignment, right? Yes. So to answer your question, yes, it resonates 100%. I'm right there with you all. Yeah.
I love bringing all those things together. I feel like I have personally a lot of history and interest in all of these things. I think just like being a lesbian who was raised by a Jewish witch, basically. But what I do really see between witchcraft and therapy and kink is the container. People love a container and we crave a container, especially in such a chaotic world. And also, we love to learn about ourselves and to read something or hear something and be like, someone understands me. We all want to be understood. So, some people find that in tarot, some people find that in astrology, in attachment styles, in even a diagnosis. So, I think that's another thread that I see between the woo, the kink, and therapy.
Yeah. So much of it is self-discovery and that joyful process of getting to know yourself. And I think that that's something that container, that kink can provide. That's so exciting. Yolanda, I'm just like, of course you did do that.
What didn't you do is the question.
You're
But you know
awesome.
what's so funny? When I finished the cohort, one of the students was like, it'd be dope, Yolanda, if you did something like with kink and chakras. I'm like, bet. You ain't said nothing but a word. So we have a bonus class called Sacred Shadow and Science. And we're going to talk about meridians. We're going to talk about all of the things. It's going to be fun. I'll let y'all know when it happens.
Yeah,
So
yeah. Please do. We will be there.
fun to put all that together. Like, that's what I used to do. It just coming right back full circle. I'm like, okay, universe, here we go. All right, I'm with it.
I'm guessing you're a manifesting generator.
I'm a projector. I'm a projector.
With all the sacral energy?
Man, but I've lived my life as a generator because that's what my worthiness was attached to doing. Like get the degree, get the certificate. And so it took a long time to separate my worthiness and value from achievement. And now it's just being in alignment, right? So now when I think about projecting, I show up and then people will invite me. But that's been the biggest issue because my North Node is in Leo, is being willing to be seen. And I'm a Scorpio. I'm like a scene. What the hell? I'm good. I'm in the shadow. I don't want to be seen. So it's been,
Well, you came here with your work cut out for you.
yeah. So I would say it's been fun, but that wouldn't be honest. It's been something. But yeah, projector.
All right, let's move on to the rapid fire round if we can do our best with that. But let's talk about a misconception that we would just love to dismantle when it comes to kink. Anything come to mind right away for anyone?
That everybody in the kink
I
community has the same experience.
Has had the same experience.
Yeah. Like everybody who's kinky are just the same. Like that's so far from the truth. Like we all bring very different parts of ourselves to the kink community. So my experience in the kink community might look vastly different than any one of yours. Like, people who are on the outside, the 50 Shades of Grey people who think they know what BDSM because they saw the movie, think that we all are the same when that's very far from the truth.
Absolutely. And to add to that, that we're all traumatized, which may or may not be true, but it doesn't necessarily have to do with desiring sex that is non normative. the correlation or the assumption that if someone wants to have sex that isn't vanilla, it's because something bad happened to them. And then what if something bad did happen to you? Aren't you still allowed to desire what you desire? So I would love to see people pathologize people less around kink, for sure.
Absolutely. That it's not profane or anti-spiritual. That kink is somehow separate from our connection to earth or nature. I think our bodies are
Truth.
ecosystem. We're deeply intertwined with the planet, and kink offers this intense embodied experience and can deepen our connection with the primal natural world, not detached from it.
I'll throw mine in. I'd say that submissiveness is somehow anti-feminist.
Mm.
Yeah.
It's a big one to unravel, but that's why I called this our rapid fire round. So these are all things that we will revisit at another time. Okay, predictions and investments. I'd love to hear if there are any sex-related investments that any of you have made, and this can be something in the market. This could be a company that you're looking into. This could be a course that you're taking and investing in your own pleasure. This could also be a toy that is a price point that you would usually gasp at, and then it had you gasping, so you're fine.
Say anything by the brand Lovins. I would recently have fallen in love with them.
Well, your first question was asking like the predictions. I'm feeling like there's a segment of the kink community, like I mentioned before, that is moving towards some type of professionalism, like wanting some type of differentiation from the work that they do as professionals versus, it just being a lifestyle or it being play or pleasure or whatever, just wanting some type of designation that I do this as a professional. I think I'm seeing that shift happening. As far as investment, I've been investing my blood, sweat, and tears to creating that. I created Kink Professional Standards Alliance to kind of foresee where it's going. So I've created that organization to be a space for community, for advocacy, for training, specifically for the kink community who wants that. And I've been kind of creating my own little toy chest. So I've bought some toys too. I've bought a couple of floggers that I like, one that with like a wooden handle and some nice leather, smells really good. So things like that. So I've been investing in my own pleasure and curiosity, and I've been investing in the work by doing it.
In my former life, before I was a therapist, I was a sex educator at a feminist sex toy store. So I actually haven't needed, this sounds like an ad, but it's not. I haven't needed to invest in anything because when I had my discount, I bought like everything. So I still have everything I need. But 10 years later, everything I have by the brand Dick Skin is still the best. It's the best out there in the dildo market. And I'll have conversations either in my practice or socially with women who feel as though they are straight, but they're like, I just love, like, I just love dick. Like, I just can't give it up. And I'm like, oh, sweetie, you haven't tried a Vic skin. So I'll just leave it there.
Are you sure this isn't an ad by the lesbian raised by a Jewish witch?
And I want one, so it worked. It worked. I want one. So please send me the link because I want a couple.
I got you. Yeah, dump him, buy a Vic skin, be gay. You'll be fine.
You'll be fine.
Episode is sponsored by.
Yeah, come on. Let's get it. All right, Brittany, what about you? What are you investing in?
Just myself, my relationships, and my community, trying to just, yeah, foster those right now. It's finally spring here, so it feels like everything's blooming, which I appreciate.
I would say for myself, I'm investing in my pleasure in a way that I really haven't in a year. I was single for a year just to reconnect to my own body and reorient my inner compass and ask myself a lot of questions about desire. I had been exploring polyamory for a few years and I just kind of started asking myself, is this really what I want? I allowed myself to, I think, deconstruct a lot of the ideas that I had and an identity that I had built. And I realized that I was actually looking for a monogamous relationship, and I've found myself with my person in this beautiful monogamous relationship and just like feeling so loved and cared for. And he's downstairs right now making me steak and I have a big glass of red wine waiting. So I feel like I'm I'm investing in my pleasure with a feeling of wholesomeness that I have not had in a long time. And that feels really nourishing.
So
Thank you for
beautiful.
sharing that. Right. I feel like
Yeah.
I got some of that energy and that vibe. Like, thank you. That felt good. I like I like it.
This was a fantastic discussion. We will definitely do this again. We're going to have to check in a few months and see where everyone's at. Please follow their work. You'll find everything in the show notes. Thank you for being with us here on both sides of the Slash podcast. We'll see you next time. And until then, play your heart out.